Hi Math, I'm Andy. This is Module 5, clue number 4 of our murder mystery party. I'm going to move through these problems relatively quickly, but good thing this is a recorded video. You can pause it, play back, anything that you need. So the guest's favorite hobby can be found by solving the problems below using the graphs and the diagrams. What we're going to do is we're going to answer problems A through G. We're going to write the answers here, and we're going to find the letters that associate to those answers. So I'm going to save this code cracker sheet, and we'll come back to it. Clue A and B. It says find the length of the segment from 0,5 to 6,1. So 0,5 to 6,1. That is describing the length of this segment. Now the only way that I know how to do that is to turn it into a right triangle and solve using the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to draw a line straight down and straight across. And now what's great about this being on the coordinate plane is I can measure that this is 4 units down, and I can measure that this is 6 units across. And so I have a right triangle that has a side of 4 and a side of 6, and I don't know the hypotenuse. But I know the Pythagorean theorem. It says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is my longest side. So again, I'm going to plug a and b are going to be the 4 and the 6, and c is going to be what I don't know. So this is going to be 4 squared plus 6 squared equals the unknown length squared. We'll go through the math. 4 squared is 16, 6 squared is 36, and I don't know c squared, but 16 plus 36 is 52. Now to undo the square, we take the square root. So square rooting c squared gives me c, and square rooting 52 gives me 7.21. Rounding to the nearest tenth, it is 7.2. So going back to my code cracker, my answer for A is 7.2, and I find that 7.2 on my chart matches with the letter, it's H-I, so it is an I. Moving on, like I said, I'll move relatively quickly. B asks for 1, 2, 0, 2. So from 1, 0, that's right here, to 0, 2, that's right here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw a right triangle. I see that this side measures 2 and this side measures 1. So I can use the Pythagorean theorem. 2 squared plus 1 squared equals the unknown side squared. 2 squared is 4, 1 squared is 1, equals c squared. 4 plus 1 is 5. So I need to take the square root of 5 to get the value of c, and the square root of 5 measures about 2.23. Now 2.23 rounded to the nearest tenth would just be 2.2. So going back to my code cracker, question B, I got an answer of 2.2. So when I look up 2.2, I see that 2.2 is connected with the letter N. Now we're on a roll. Let's look at problem C. So C, D, and E all reference this same image. C says, what is the length of P? Well, I don't know how P is, but I do notice that it is connected to this right triangle. So I can set up the Pythagorean theorem to say that 4 squared plus p squared is equal to 8 squared, right? That's the hypotenuse. 4 times 4 is 16 plus p squared. 8 times 8 is 64. And I have to do a little inverse operations. I'm going to subtract 16 on both sides, and I get that p squared is equal to 64. Take away 16, that's 48. And I take the square root, and I get that p is equal to almost 7, but not quite. We're going to say it's 6.9. So the length of p is 6.9, and so I'm going to go to my code cracker, question C. I find 6.9 on here. It looks like 6.9 is associated with the letter G. Moving on, D, length of R. Well, look where R is. R is right here. Now we know that the entirety from this end to this end is 15, and we now know that P is 6.9. And so we can actually just use subtraction, and so R is going to be whatever 15 take away 6.9 is equal to. 15 take away 6.9 is 8.1. So R must be 8.1. So go to my code cracker, D, 8.1, and let's see if I can find that answer. Ooh, the letter C is 8.1. So we're almost there. We got 3 more to do. Let's take a look at letter E. We want the length of X. Well, I notice X represents a hypotenuse of a right triangle, and so it looks like we have our 2 sides. So we're going to set up the Pythagorean theorem. It's going to be 8.1 squared plus 4 squared will equal that hypotenuse x squared. So we'll just set up our Pythagorean theorem. 8.1 squared is equal to 65.61, 65.61. 4 squared is 16 equals x squared, so we do our squares. Now we just add those together. 65.61 plus 16 is 81.61. That equals x squared. And now we're just going to take the square root of both of these sides. And the square root of 81.61 is equal to 9.03. And rounding that to a nearest tenth, it's going to be just 9. So looking up E, I get an answer of 9. I go to my code cracker, I can put in the number 9, and I find that 9.0 is connected to the letter K. So I, N, G, C, and K. So far, we have 2 more problems to think about. Let's take a look at F and G. So this F describes the length of the leg of a triangle with a hypotenuse of 16 and a side of 12. So the leg of a triangle, so let's go ahead and draw that right triangle. It says the hypotenuse of 16. Well, the hypotenuse is always the side across from the right angle, and a side of 12. So let's say this side is 12. This is the length that we want. Let's set up another Pythagorean theorem. 12 squared plus x squared equals 16 squared. Go through the math. 12 squared is 144. 16 squared is 256. And we need to do some inverse operations. Subtract 144 on both sides. I get x squared. 256 minus 144 is 112. Take the square root of both of these, and I get x is equal to 10.58. Now 10.58 will round to 10.6. So question F, we set up our triangle, we set up our Pythagorean theorem, and we solved it. Going back to my code cracker, I have F was 10.6. And 10.6 matches with the letter O. Very, very nice. And finally, G, the length of the hypotenuse of a triangle with sides 8 and 7. So we don't know the hypotenuse length. So we don't know that one. I'll put an X there. And we know the lengths are 8 and 7. I can set up my Pythagorean theorem. 8 squared plus 7 squared equals the hypotenuse squared. And I can use the exponents. 8 squared is 64, 7 squared is 49, and I don't know what x squared is. 64 plus 49 is 113. And finally, to get x by itself, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of 113 is 10.6. Well, it's interesting. That's the same answer that we got before. So that means on my code cracker, G is also a 10.6. That's going to be associated with the letter O. And now here's the thing for you. This is not the hobby. You have to unscramble these letters to decide who it was that did the murder. So their hobby is whatever these letters unscramble to be. Good luck, gumshoes, and I hope you're able to solve the mystery.